Good morning and welcome to week 6. This week we have a number of different options to do, and I say that because this is week 6. In effectively 14 days, 2 weeks, I have to post your midterm grades. So, what I've decided to do this week is give you and encourage you wholeheartedly to take the quiz that I have structured because it is going to give you an example of what your final exam is going to be like. And it's going to give you a sense of what you're going to need to be thinking about in terms of understanding the materials. This past week, when I did the AI generated analysis, a number of you still didn't give me a lot of detail about things. And unfortunately, you're going to have to do that. One of the things about AI is that it doesn't have access to complete books. That's one of the big things that publishers have been very adamant about, is that they're not giving license to any AI producing company to actually go through their backlist and download those books. So if you try to get general answers about Harari and Frankopan, that's what they're going to be, very general. They can't give you specifics. Where the AI is getting its information is by reading reviews and summaries that are available online in blogs and in open source things. But it can't give you a thorough actual understanding, which was why it was really important for you to do the CTE from this past week on Harari's chapter 16, The Capitalist Creed. This week, you have the option with your CTE to do one on industrialization. And this is a primary source analysis. There are 2 primary source documents in there. You're going to read them. You're going to talk about their bias. You're going to compare them literally on the point of their bias and what they're talking about. They're very good sources. I tend to like them a lot. And I encourage you very much to do this, because this is going to go towards what you're going to be doing on the annotated bibliography in week 10 when you are giving your own analysis of the 3 primary sources that you're using. So that is your option for the CTE for this week. You also, of course, have the requisite discussion. We are moving into industrialization. And this week, using your textbook and the mandatory readings from, in this case, Sarah Pruitt, you're going to be talking about, and Frankopan and Harari, you're going to be talking about several of these words. You're going to pick 4 of them and talk about how they are related to industrialization. What they are, how they arose as a byproduct of industrialization, and what they say about the way society has changed because of industrialization. Literally, as you see here from the following list, pick 4 words and discuss their historical meaning and the events that produce that word. Then discuss how we view that word today, because many of these words have taken on different connotations today. Has it taken on one, and if so, why and how? How do Frankopan and Harari see industrialization and its effect on the words you have chosen? Which means you're going to be looking at what each of them say about each of the words you pick. So be sure you include that with the page numbers. Why did you pick the 4 words you chose? What is that going to tell you about your own bias? And again, you really definitely need to read the Pruitt article on how socialism and communism are different. And of course, the required Frankopan, chapter 16, Harari, chapter 17. All right, so that's the discussion if you're doing it. But what I want to get you to is this thing that I actually very much encourage you to do, which is this industrialization quiz. Now, notice it requires respondus, which means you need to go ahead. I know I told you in the first week that you could do it sometime towards the end of the class, but I've decided since then to do this because one of the things I noticed when I was reviewing last semester's and the semester before that's grade work is that people do pretty bad on the final exam. And I think it's because it's a timed test and they don't have any experience with it. So in this case, you're going to have an industrialization quiz. You will have 1 hour to take it. You will have to have the lockdown browser and your webcam in order to do so, Respondus Monitor. So you're going to need to download those and make sure they work. This practice quiz right here is one that you can use to make sure that your Respondus browser and monitor are working all right. before you actually start it. Once you have that downloaded, anytime between now and midnight on Monday night, you can take this quiz. You may use your textbook and you may use the required Frankman and Harari, but that's all you can use. And you're going to need to have access to them on some device other than your computer because the lockdown browser will not let you access them. You will need to cite, and by that I mean all you've got to do is put the author and the page number. You don't have to worry about the date. You don't have to worry about a works cited because the only sources you can use are your textbook and the Frankman and Harari. If you use anything else, it's an automatic 0. And I will point out that one of the great things that the Respondus Monitor lets me do is actually see you and see your page. So don't mess around with this. Don't be using AI. Don't be using anything else. You can only use the sources you have. You're going to have 1 hour to answer 5 questions. Each one of them is worth 20 points. The great thing for you guys is that these questions are all literally on the readings from this week. This is not a cumulative test. This is not the same way that your final exam is going to be when I'm asking you to review things from the entire semester. This is literally only on the materials from this week. So that means that once you read them and make notes on them and understand what they're talking about, it should be reasonably easy for you to do all 5 of these questions in 1 hour. With 5 of them, that gives you a little over, 10 minutes per question, 12 minutes per question. Once you start the test, you only have an hour to do it. You can't go back into it. You can't stop and go back into it. Once you start it, you have to finish it because you only get that 1 attempt. And you have until midnight to do it. The great thing about this one is that it can count for whatever you want it to count for. It can be either a discussion or it can count as a CTE. So whichever one you're having more problems with, it can count for that. All right, so I encourage you to do as many of the things this week as you can, but I put a big pressure on you. I'm not going to say that it is required, but I very, very strongly encourage you to take this industrialization quiz because, again, I think it will be good for helping you prepare for the final exam and for understanding what kinds of things you're going to see on the final exam. All right, if you have questions, email me. Otherwise, I look forward to discussions, CTEs, and hopefully this quiz over the course of the next week.